Hello everyone. So as Sagar mentioned, I work with the BNHS and I've been quite some time I've been studying lizards and trying to understand them across India. So let's start about the lizards, or which are very commonly addressed to as dragons. So before that, let's go back a bit into time. You must all know there was a time when all the continents were together as a single continent called as Pangaea, a supercontinent, and slowly this landmass started breaking into two major areas. The ones which were north of hemisphere was called as Laurasia, and the ones to south were together called as the Gondwana or Gondwanan land. So around 200 million years ago, these landmass started separating. This was a time when dinosaurs ruled the planet. There was dinosaurs widespread all across, and we know this through fossil records, which had similar fauna all across the continents. And over here, if you see this small triangular plate is where we are now, the plate of India, which started moving slowly northwards. And during this movement, the Indian plate separated from Madagascar, and due to drifts over Union hotspots, the Western Ghats started forming. Then, around 65 million years ago, due to Deccan Trap volcanism, we saw the molding of the northern Western Ghats. And slowly, around 50 million years ago, the Indian plate at last collided with the Eurasian plate, which gave them the rise of Himalayas. During this journey from separating from Gondwana to reach the Eurasian plate, India went through many changes, many geological changes, as well as many faunal changes. This was a time of diversification as well as colonization in the landmass. So many species of reptiles as well as other fauna separated during this time. And this leads us to the present day India that we see today. So it's almost like an island. You can consider this like an island with the highest mountain ranges in the north, dry deserts on the northwest, and sea in two sides of the south, which makes India a land with many barriers as well as gateways. And you can see India has been now classified into different biogeographic zones, and each zone has unique fauna restricted to this land. So from widespread dinosaurs, today we have many widespread lizards and many lizards which are endemic to this region. So why are we talking about lizards? So Pan has been associated and quite at times fascinated by these animals. From the conceptions of dragons, which were thought to be widespread across China, Eastern Europe, as well as dinosaurs, which were quite widespread on the planet. They have been parts of mythology. Until today, we see them parts of various pop culture references. These animals are quite cool. They are very small, primitive, but yet they can perform many different feats. Like some can change colors, some are known to fly, some are also venomous. And most of these animals are restricted in distribution. They are small-sized cryptids, and hence they are excellent models for ecological studies. Now, they are cold-blooded animals, so indicators of change in climate. They are also integral part of the ecosystem. So, what are lizards? Lizards are reptiles, right? So they are the first terrestrial land vertebrates. That is, land evolved on land. They were the first animals to come and lay eggs on land. Most of the reptiles lay eggs, leathery or hard-shelled. They are cold-blooded animals. That is, they need to bask in the sun to keep themselves warm. They are air breathing. That is, they have well-developed lungs and they have internal fertilization. They were the first animals to have amniotic development. So they share this with birds. If you look at over here, this basically shows the relationships of reptiles and lizards with all other animals. Over here, we see reptiles are very closely related to birds. They are grouped together. And unlike what we have thought that reptiles and amphibians are often put together, they are studied together, but they are more closely related to birds. And so many people also consider bird as glorified reptiles. So what exactly is a lizard? So we said lizards are reptiles, right? Lizards are reptiles with limbs, but there are some which don't have limbs also. We'll talk about that in the future later. They often have clawed, the legged limbed reptiles have clawed, well-developed claws. In some, the claws are very modified. Lizards have eyelids. So eyelids can be fixed or the eyelids can be closed. They have an ear opening or they have a ear covered by a scale like this, which is called as a tympanum. So lizards are scaled animals. Like reptiles, all lizards have scales on their body. Some of the scales can be overlapping, or the scales can be granular, like this over here. So India, as we were saying, has amazing diversity of lizards. As I saw, we have different biogeographic zones, and each zones have many different species. So currently, we know there are around 240 different species of lizards, but this number is underestimation because each year there are new species being discovered and described. And the maximum diversity is seen in the group called as Geckonids or the geckos, which are also the lizards that we most commonly know. We see them in our houses. We have often seen them while growing up, which is followed by agamids and skinks, which are also very commonly seen lizards. There are other groups of lizards which are not as diverse, like the varanids or monitor lizards or eublephaриds or leopard geckos. So let's see and we'll talk about each group and try to see how we can identify each group, what is the specifications in each. Okay. Yeah. So the first group, agamids. So these lizards are lizards which have some cylindrical body. So the body is somewhat triangular in shape with a tapering towards the top and a wider bottom. These are animals which have large scales on the body, which are overlapping scales. They also have a well-developed crest on their body with spines. They might be on the neck, on the back, which are called as nuchal or dorsal crest. They also have ornamentation. So most of the agamid lizards are diurnal and they have sexual dimorphism. Like you can say the male and females apart based on the colors, based on the modifications on the body. And their ear, they don't have a closed ear. The ear has a tympanum, like a disc over here. So within agamids now, this is the most common agamids that we see belonging to the genus Calotes. So this, if you see this picture, the one on the left bottom is a Calotes versicolor, which we see in our gardens, which we often see in our scrub forest. This is the most widespread agamid lizard in India. And it is widespread all across the subcontinent, as well as it has been introduced in parts of Eastern Europe and also Africa. So this is generally seen as a brown or gray colored animal, but the young ones also have stripes on their body. So hence the name versicolor, which means it can come in multiple colors. Yeah, they have well developed spines right from the head to the back. So it's a well developed nuchal as well as dorsal crest. They have well developed claws on their limbs. In southern India, people from southern India might have also seen this one, which is a green calotes or green forest lizard. This is also quite widespread in the peninsular part of southern India in the dry and slightly low elevation moist forest. These two are more endemic to the Western Ghats. By endemic, I mean which are found only in this particular region, part of Western Ghats, and these have a large scales on their body, and they are generally found in wet forests. So all calotes, if you see, they have more or less uniform scales on their body. The scales are large and uniform. They are almost of the same size. They have small, and all of them have extreme colors. If the males in the breeding season get really bright colorations, like bright head, red head, and the body is of the uniform color. The other group of agamid lizards, which are very closely related to Calotes and look similar, as this group called as Monilesaurus. Till recent time, these were put into Calotes and has been recently separated out. So these are Calotes-like lizards, but with smaller size. They have very small scales on their back. If you look at the spines on the neck, only the neck region has well-developed spines, while the dorsal or the spines on the back are not as well developed. So these are forest-dwelling lizards, and most of them are endemic to the Western Ghats, to the forests of Western Ghats. Currently, we know they are known by 4 different species. Also, these have a fold of skin across the neck, which goes all around the neck, and forms like a necklace, and that's why the name Monilesaurus, which basically means a lizard with a necklace on its body. Okay, so coming back to the lizards, which I was saying are endemic to the Western Ghats. So there are 2 different groups which are endemic to the high elevations of Western Ghats. There is this one which is called as spiny lizards or Salia. and there is a small-eared dragon, which is Monilesaurus, found in the high elevations of Augusta Malay. So spiny lizards and Monilesaurus both are, sorry, Microaurus are both are very ancient lineages, which are found only in the high elevation wet zones of the Western Ghats. Okay? Uh, So within agamids, there are till now what we were seeing were forest dwelling agamid lizards, but there are few also which are found on the ground, other than the tree throated lizard, the kangaroo lizard, which are widespread across the dry parts of the peninsular India. So they are ground dwelling, fast moving animals, and they have this amazing adaptation. The males have this large scales on the throat where the gular sac, the neck, which is a throat sac, is enlarged, and they use it to display to attract females as well as to ward off males. This tiny lizard over here is a lizard called as kangaroo lizard, which is of the name Autocryptis. Currently, there is only one species known from India, which is found in the southern forests of Kerala, southern Kerala, and they are litter-dwelling animals found on the ground, and they are called as kangaroo lizards because when they move, when they are alert and they run, they walk, run with their on their two hind limbs. These lizards can easily be identified with the modification of the fifth toe. In both these groups, the fifth toe is highly reduced. In the Autocryptis or the kangaroo lizard, if you see in this picture, the fifth toe is almost indistinct, but they have a very small vestigial fifth toe. While in the fan-throated lizards, the fifth toe is completely missing. They only have four toes in their lips. This might be an adaptation to move on the ground, with the fourth toe being really long, which helps in jumping and running on the forest, on the floor. Other than these lizards, there are also other agamid lizards which are very diverse, like this one, which is a well-adapted flying or gliding lizard called as Draco. This is also often referred to as the flying lizard because actually they glide. In this, the lizard, they have a very dorsoventrally flattened body, and the ribs are enlarged. They have enlarged limbs, which is supported by a leathery skin, which is called as patagium. They open this up to glide from a higher level to lower level. They also, Dracos also have this extension near the throat, which the males have it longer and they use it to display. They can be of different colors. In peninsular India, there is only one species which is widespread called as Dracodocimeri, while they are more diverse in the northeast Indian forest. They are found in generally forest dwelling animals. While there are ground dwelling agamas like this one, which is a rock agama of peninsular India. This animal is endemic to the peninsular Indian region, while there are few in the Himalayas, like the Himalayan rock agama, and then there are toad-headed agamas in the which are ground-dwelling agamas in the Himalayas as well as in the dry arid regions. These toad-headed agamas, they have a unique behavior of hiding inside gravel or sand, and they bury themselves. So different groups of lizards have adapted and modified based on which kind of habitat they are found in. Okay, so moving on to the another group of lizards, which are the most diverse group of lizards, geckos. This is also the lizards that we are very well related with, because many of us have one or two geckos living in our houses. You might see them, they might be often hiding behind your tube lights, behind your cupboards, but you know them. So geckos are generally dorsoventrally flattened. They are pressed from top to bottom. Not all of them. Some are slightly cylindrical, but most of the geckos are dorsoventrally flattened. Unlike the agamids, the geckos have granular scales. Most geckos, you will see the scales are circular. They are set next to each other like this, like in this picture. The scales might be modified, like there might be some larger scales called as tubercles. Some might have very small scales. Also, geckos are excellent climbers. They have very well adapted feet. Like in this picture, if you see, geckos have high modification in their feet. So this is called as lamelles. Lamelles are basically made up of small microstructures called as setae, like thin hair-like structures, which are millions of hair-like setae which come together, and they have this force called as van der Waals force, which helps them to cling and climb. So that's why you see them climbing on walls, on vertical surfaces. They also can hang upside down. So depending on which group of gecko you are looking at, the limbs might be extremely modified. So some might have like amazing lamellar development, while some of the lamellae might be rudimentary, right? Yeah. So the general gecko that we see in our houses are often, it depends on where you belong, but most of them are of the group called as Hemidactylus. Yeah, so they belong to this group called as Hemidactylus, where the lamellae is divided. You see in this picture, there is a vertical line and the lamellae is divided on two sides. These are very well climbing geckos, and they can be of small size to really large size. They are generally found on rocks, on trees. Some might be ground dwelling, hiding under rocks. Many different species. Most of them are nocturnal. They have vertical eye pupil and they have a small ear pore. Within Hemidactylus also, you'll see multiple modifications in the scales. There can be some which are rock-dwelling forms which will have these, which are called as tuberculated skin. If you see these large scales, which these are called as tubercles, which large triangular scales with the keels, which are basically a fold on the scale. They can be granular scales like this tree-dwelling gecko called as bark gecko, which has these highly granular scales. Some, very rarely, of the Hemidactylus might have overlapping scales, like this ground-dwelling small tiny gecko called as Hemidactylus cabricips. So they are, most of them, the large-bodied ones are found on either on rocks on trees, while the tiny, small-bodied ones are ground-dwelling. They'll be hiding under rocks. Okay. There's another group of highly diverse geckos, the day geckos, or the geckos of the genus Cncmaspis. If you look over here, they have a circular eye pupil, which is a character which because of which they are considered to be diurnal, but there are some species which are more active towards the evening or early morning. This is the only genus of diurnal geckos in mainland India. In the islands, you can also see groups like Phelsuma, which have circular eye pupil, but in the mainland India, you only have this group. Cncmaspis are highly diverse in peninsular India, with many species in the Western Ghats as well as in Eastern Ghats, and many new species have been described. And like the Hemidactylus, they are found in multiple different habitats, right from low elevation deciduous forest to high elevation mountain forest. They can be very tiny, small bodied to really large bodied. But they are not found very commonly in the dry areas. They are more forested animals, more common in forested regions than the dry zones. So, as I was saying about the body modifications, like some, like this Goa day gecko, they can have spines on their body. Some can have tubercles, like this one in the northern Western Ghats, while some can have granular scales on the body. The third group of geckonids, this one is called as Hemiphalodactylus or worm geckos. These worm geckos are very unique in the shape. If you look at the body, they have elongated body and with smaller limbs. They are small, tiny geckos which are generally hidden. But not much was known about these geckos till recent times. Just in the past couple of years, there are many new species are being described of this, and now we know they are more diverse than what was thought. People from Bangalore there is this species, it's recently described from Bangalore, called as Jnana, which is also found in the campus of Indian Institute of Science, National Center for Biological Sciences. So these geckos are quite close to humans, but were often neglected because of their small size. And they also have this unique lamellar structure, if you see over here, in which the basal lamellae, the ones which are towards the feet, are single, while the upper ones are U-shaped and divided. Another very diverse group of geckos are this group called as Certodactylus. They were commonly often called as bent-toed geckos because if you look over here, the feet, the toe looks like a sickle, like a bat. So that's why they were called as bent-toed geckos. This is also highly diverse group. Within this, you have two groups. One which is a ground-dwelling group of smaller geckos, while there are rock-dwelling groups which are much slightly larger. These rock-dwelling forms are more found in the northeast region, northeast and Himalayan region, and Southeast Asia, while these ground-dwelling forms are more restricted to peninsular India and parts of Sri Lanka. So these were earlier called as Geckoella, but now they are clubbed together. The smaller ones, you have people from Bombay and from parts of Karnataka might have seen them if they were going around forests. These are called as banded geckos. So Deccan banded gecko or white banded gecko. This one, Gecko Certodactylus varadgiri, was described from Bombay itself, from around Mumbai. Yeah. So another gecko over here, this one is called as Dravido gecko. This is an ancient lineage of gecko endemic to the Western Ghats, higher elevations of Western Ghats. If you see over here, this gecko, the lamellae are single. They are not divided. They have single lamellae, and they have, if you see over here, this is called as femoral pores. They have pre-anofemoral pores. Basically, the pores are right from the above the anal region and from the femur, which is the thigh bone. So above the femur, it goes all the way continuous. So they are called as pre-anofemoral pores. So these femoral pores are also a character that we look into to distinguish between groups of lizards, of geckos. Okay, this was also thought to be a single species till recent times, and just last year, it was described. Multiple new species was described from this group. Another very interesting gecko is golden gecko of genus Calodactylids. In India, there is only one species, one known species, Calodactylids aureus, and this one is restricted to the drier rocky habitat. It was thought to be found only in parts of Eastern Ghats, but now people have found them in different parts of some parts of Mysore Plateau, also the rocky habitats of Mysore Plateau, and multiple parts of the Eastern Ghats. This has a very unique feet modification, if you see in this illustration. And this is the only gecko which is protected in the Schedule 1 of Wildlife Protection Act. The males have really brightly golden color, so that's why the name. And these geckos have communal nesting. Many females come together and lay eggs. Often around 300 eggs have been found stuck to these rock surfaces. Yeah, after geckos, we come to another group of lizards, skinks. Skinks are also lizards which you might have commonly seen when you walk through forest or along gardens. They are ground-dwelling lizards with shiny scales, shiny overlapping scales, and they live among leaf litter. So you might hear them moving around, slithering away in the daytime. They are diurnal lizards. They are generally robust-bodied animals with well-developed limbs. They also, like geckos, have an ear pore. They have a small ear hole. They are circular eye pupils. The head scales are shield-like, large shield-like head scales. And again, multiple different groups of skinks are found with different body structures, like some which are these robust bodies, like some which are really slender bodies. The genus Eutropis, which are commonly called as grass skinks, are very diverse and one of the most commonly seen skinks. This has Eutropis carinata, which is called as the Brahmini skink, which is very widespread. Eutropis macularia, another group which is widespread in the forests, and some other endemic groups like Clavicola. These are found in forested habitats as well as sometimes in gardens, but in shaded areas among leaf litters. And they have highly cylindrical body, overlapping scales, and scales have well-developed keels. We see there's multiple lines of the scales. These are called as keels. Yeah. Another group of skinks are called as snake skinks or supple skinks. So these skinks are really long-bodied, long, slender bodied with very tiny limbs. If you see in this picture, the limbs are almost not visible. These are generally fossorial or semi-fossorial lizards which stay often just above the ground surface, hidden under rocks. In the daytime, they move around leaf litter as well as in grassy areas. You generally find them in drier habitats. Only one species is found in the endemic to the Western Ghats. Other than these widespread skinks, there are also some skinks which are endemic to particular forested regions. Like this skink, this is called as a cat skink, a Ristella of the group called as Ristella, which have cat-like retractable claws. These are endemic to the forests of Western Ghats. There are 4 known species and not very well studied groups. some species have been one species has been rediscovered recently called as Ristella rurki, which is found in the higher elevations of the southwestern Ghats, and very distinct lizards with bright, brilliant colors and iridescent scales. But because of their small size and their affinity to wet forest, it's very rarely seen. Another similar endemic group of skinks are called as Caslia or the blue-tailed skinks. These skinks are found in higher elevations of the Western Ghats and generally found along shola forests and in the grasslands. The young ones have brilliant blue scales, while the adults have much more dry grayish blue scales tail. These skinks are known by 5 species. Again, very little is known about them. Known about the ecology of these animals. There are some other very unique group of skinks, like these few over here. There is one group called as Dacia, which is tree skinks. These skinks are modified to climb trees. Only 2 species are known from the Peninsular India, from Western Ghats, while 2 others are known from Nicobar Islands. They have modified feet to climb trees. There's another group called as Phenomorphus, which is widespread in the Northeast India, but only 1 species is known in Peninsular India. This is one very unique skink, one or two unique skinks, like they're belonging to the group of limbless skinks called as Cncmaspis and Barkudia. These are found in the Eastern Ghats. Very little is known. They are fossorial skinks, generally burrowing, and so might have very snake-like, but they have a ear opening, small ear opening. The limbs are rudimentary, very small, tiny limbs. You don't see limbs. There is a small bony projection in Cncmaspis that you can see. Another group called as so these are fossorial skinks, which are ground dwelling, burrowing, generally show burrowing affinity and found in the drier parts. Very little is known about these groups. After skinks, we come to another group of lizards called as Lacertids, which are also referred to as true lizards. These the group Lacertidae is more widespread in Central Asia and parts of Africa, while in India there is one group called as Ophisops, which is quite widespread, just found all across the drier regions and right from the deserts to parts of Eastern Ghats and Peninsular India. These do look like skinks, often look like skinks, but can be separated by them by the presence of drier, rough scales. While skinks have shiny scales, these lizards have rough scales on their body with keels. If you look over here also, they have keeled dry scales. They are also ground-dwelling lizards, which are often found in grasslands in dry regions. Yeah, within Lacertid, there is another group called as Tachytromus or long-tailed lizards. These are found in the northeast forests. These are not found in the southern India or peninsular India, only restricted to the Himalayan regions of northeast India. They have, like other Lacertids, they have rough scales on their body, but with a really long tail. Yeah. So within lizards, there are other group of lizards also, which are quite common. The leopard gecko, which looks very similar to all the other geckonids, but they have eyelids which are movable. If you remember, I said during when we are talking about geckos have immovable eyelids. The eyelids are fixed, while in leopard geckos, they can close eyelids. They are movable eyelids. These leopard geckos are diverse in the drier parts of India. They are found in forested regions of peninsular India. You can see them in like Satpuras and in central India, in Rajasthan. There are like a couple of known species in this group. They're large-bodied lizards with brilliantly patterned geckos. So these are geckos also which have been kept in used in pet trade because of these amazing color forms. Another group are Varanus or monitor lizards, really large lizards with biforked tongue. They're snake-like tongue. They have, like geckos, they have granular scales on their body. They don't have overlapping scales. The scales are granular. They have a really long tail. And monitor lizards are also quite widespread all across. The Bengal monitor is the most common species, which is widespread, while you have water monitors in the eastern part of India, a desert monitor in the desert regions, and yellow monitor in the north. Another group, another lizard, the chameleon, is one of the most well-adapted lizards. We know there is only one species which is widespread all across India and Sri Lanka, but with amazing modification. If you look at the tail, they have prehensile tail, a tail which they can use to cling to objects. They have opposable fingers, like 2 fingers on one side and 3 on the others, by which they can cling to branches and climb very well. The body is laterally flattened, completely laterally flattened, which looks like a leaf. If you look at the back also, they are like serrated, which again makes it look like a leaf. They have a really long tongue, which they can use to project and catch insects, as well as they can rotate their eyes in 2 opposable directions. So one eye can look for predators and one eye can look for prey, to triangulate prey. So these amazing adaptations makes it a very well camouflaged lizard. Along with this, these lizards are also known to change color very well. They can change their body color very easily. Well, these are slow moving lizards. So if you see them on road, moving on the ground, they look like as if they are dancing. They'll put 2 steps ahead, 1 step back, and again move, which might also be an adaptation to mimic a leaf or a branch which is moving in the wind. They are generally found in scrub and open forests, and not very well found in wet regions. Okay, so these were some of the just a brief introduction to the some of the lizard groups. So again, coming back and to some of the important characters when you look at lizards and how to identify them. So we are talking about lamellae, very well developed, very well modified. The tubercles on the body, if you look over here, the scales might be very distinct. They can have overlapping scales like this, or tuberculated or granular scales. The head scales are also very important, if they are shield-like scales or granular scales. The pores in the males, which are used as characters, interesting characters, like this one has both preanal pores as well as femoral pores, while this has a continuous series of preanal-femoral pores. We do count the scales at times. So if you are thinking of to identify lizards, these are some characters to look at when you're photographing them in the field, which will help you to identify them better. Okay, so why we are again coming back to this whole point of talking about lizards. So these are, as you saw for this presentation, they are amazingly diverse group of lizards, amazing endemism in many places. They have many of them are ecological relics because they have been there for a really long time. They are ancient lineages found in only few regions, but still there has been really ignored till now. Till recent times, very less studies were done on lizards compared to the other groups of reptiles like snakes. We don't know much about the natural history, the ecology. There are very few conservation initiatives for lizards. So lizards, because they are cold-blooded animals, can be very good indicators for climate change, for deforestation, because they are so restricted to few regions. If they are good indicators for landscape change also. So what we need to focus on when we look for these kind of animals, one thing that's very important is the geography of the landscape. We saw how the Indian landmass has got different biogeographic zones, and each biogeographic zones have distinct examples of these groups. So it's very important to keep in mind when you are looking at these animals to look at the distribution, and also keep an eye of where you found an animal. This applies to all different organisms, not just lizards. Where you found it, what was the mountain range, what kind of habitat it was living at, what was the microhabitat. If you can collect some natural history information, like if you saw it feeding, if you saw it laying eggs, or what it was doing, these are important information that very few people know, and it can help us in understanding these animals more. Yeah, so these are some factors which I wanted to end it with. So yeah, I would, so by this I will come to the end of the presentation. I would like to thank all my friends and colleagues who have helped in the field. There are numerous departments, the forest department, numerous organizations which have been helping me to gather knowledge across time. Thank you all for listening, and I will be open for questions.